Hello everyone and welcome. In this video I'll be sharing my thoughts on the latest episode and what may well turn out to be the last episode of Telltale's The Walking Dead. Firstly, I'll be discussing my views on the game and then I'll be sharing my opinion on the news coming out from Telltale. If you just only want to hear my views on the Telltale situation, then please skip to this point in the video. Those of you who are staying though to watch the whole thing, please be aware I won't be holding back on any spoilers. Also, I apologise in advance if I sound a bit muffled, I do have a cold at the moment. So anyway, without further ado, let's begin. I'm sure that most of you already know that I didn't really think much of The Walking Dead's A New Frontier campaign, and because of this I was a bit worried about how this season would play out. Well, last month Telltale kicked off its final season in excellent fashion with a brilliant premiere, and I'm pleased to say that the recently released follow-up episode Suffer the Children, whilst not as good as the entry that preceded it, is still a fun instalment which serves to set up an interesting story arc. It's just a shame that we probably won't ever see this actually resolved, but like I said, I'll talk about that a bit later on. The latest episode opens up with Clem and AJ having to deal with the fallout from AJ killing Brody last time around. The majority of the group are terrified by AJ's actions, chastising him for shooting who they say was an unarmed man. How you deal with this situation is entirely down to you. You can tell AJ that what he did was wrong and then try to apologise, or you can stick to your guns and say that Brody deserved to die. Personally, I decided not to take any shit from anyone as I felt AJ did the right thing in killing the mullet-wearing prick, although sadly not many people in the group shared this view. This entire opening sequence kind of reminded me of when Rick Grimes first arrived at Alexandria. And in fact, there are a lot of parallels throughout this episode to the Alexandria story arc found on the Walking Dead TV show. Like Rick, Clem had been through it all and had been on the road for a long time. And like the Alexandrian residents, the children at the school had spent most of their time confined inside walls, not knowing the real horrors of the world outside. When the rest of the group saw Brody get shot, it was a complete shock to them. For Clem though, well, she's seen this kind of thing happen countless times already. She knows that sometimes killing is a necessary evil, well at least my Clem did anyway. Although this narrative approach isn't going to win any awards for originality, I thought it played out rather well. I enjoyed seeing my Clem assert her authority by telling the rest of the group that they were crazy for getting mad at Brody being killed. Whereas in the TV show, I thought that Rick came off looking like a bit of an elitist arsehole who thought he was better than everyone due to the way he constantly lectured the people at Alexandria. I didn't get that with Clem. Instead, I just got the sense that she was acting out of raw emotion, which I much preferred. Sadly, because of my gung-ho approach, the community decided to vote for Clem and AJ to leave the school. Of course, this being a Telltale game, Clem and AJ probably always end up leaving regardless of the players' dialogue choices anyway. However, I still felt kind of guilty that I couldn't prevent poor AJ ending up on the road again. I mentioned this in my last review and I'll say it again. For me, the game does a great job of making me feel like a guardian who genuinely cares for AJ. He's not just some annoying NPC companion like kids are in most games, instead I simply want to do the best by him. And when Clem and him were forced out of the community, I felt as though I failed in my parental duties, even though I do still stand by Clem supporting him killing Brody. Clem and AJ are escorted away from the school through the woods, and it's in these woods that two truly shocking moments occur which I did not expect. Firstly, the raider who I pushed into a pack of walkers last episode was still alive, somehow. Like Clem, I honestly thought he died, but it was cool to see him back minus one arm. Much to my surprise, the raider was also with an old acquaintance of Clem and Lee's, that being Season 1's Lily. At first I have to admit that I didn't really remember who Lily was until her and Clem started talking. Then I recalled that during my Season 1 playthrough, Lee left her by the roadside after she killed Carly. To be honest, I assumed she was killed off screen a long time ago, so I didn't see this coming. It's nice that The Walking Dead hasn't forgotten about its first season. Seeing as A New Frontier felt like a bit of a soft reboot with few callbacks to seasons previous, I was happy to see that this time around the developers hadn't forgotten about the players who'd been with the game from the start. I didn't like Lily when I played through the first season. I thought her dad was an arsehole and I found her to be one as well. And when she started bad-mouthing Lee this time around, well, that pissed me off. So much so that I tried to kill her every time the game offered me even the slightest chance of doing so. I'm sure that some people may argue that referencing Lee is just a cheap tactic to evoke nostalgia, but I don't agree with this. I find that even after all this time has passed, I still care about Lee. His death remains one of the saddest in video games, so when a character disrespects him, I'm not happy about it. Combine this with the fact that I despised Lily when she first appeared, and in my mind you've got potential for the best Walking Dead video game villain since the Stranger in Season 1. Of course I sided against that, at which point a firefight broke out with Clem and AJ surrounded by a pack of walkers shortly after, causing Lily to flee and Clem to fight for her life. Although I think the action sequences in which the player is handed control of Clem as she has to fight with walkers are a lot better mechanically than in seasons previous, I still find him to be the game's weak link. All you need to do is press one button to stun a walker and then another to kill them, and it kind of makes a mockery of the undead. Because I found the walkers so easy to kill, I didn't find him scary, and seeing Clem do the same animation over and over as she kicked one in the leg and then stabbed it in the head quite frankly by the end of the episode got a bit dull. Granted, the game does mix it up a bit later on when Clem gets the bow and she has to deal with flaming walkers who need to be shot and regular walkers who need to be stabbed, however combat has always been the weakest part of these games and it remains so here. Getting back to the topic at hand, I mentioned a moment ago that I was shocked twice during the sequence in the woods, and the second shock came when a Whisperer showed up. The Whisperer can initially be seen during one of the combat sequences. I noticed he stood out when he was walking towards Clem as he looked a bit weird compared to the other walkers around him. After the player spots him, the game transitions into a cutscene with James, as he's called, being introduced. As a fan of the comics, this was an excellent little nod to them. I also love the fact that when Clem sat down with James and started talking to him, James said that he had left the Whisperers after they attacked a community due to him not wanting to be part of the carnage. I believe he was referring to the Whisperer attack on Alexandria, which again, as a fan of the comics, was a nice little nerd moment for me. James goes on to say that Lily's group are fighting a war with another group and Lily is kidnapping kids in order to train them as soldiers. James then escorts Clem to the school before just deciding to leave. This is a real shame. I would have liked James to stay as he was an intriguing character, and I do wonder what, if any, future plans Telltale had with him. Anyway, what follows is a portion of the episode in which Clem has to get the group and the camp itself suitably prepared for a retaliation attack. The game then enters the quiet before the storm period, with things taking a breather before Lily's assault. I enjoyed this slowed down segment due to the fact that it gave me a chance to rethink my stance on many of the characters. My Clem had been angry with the school group throughout most of the episode for abandoning her. However, on her return, I let her make peace with the majority of the group. Going into the greenhouse with Mitch made me realise that he wasn't as bad as I initially thought, and hearing Lewis say he was sorry for the way he acted allowed me to forgive him and start a friendship anew with him. This episode was very adept at making me rethink my opinion on certain characters throughout its runtime. At the start of the episode, I pretty much hated everyone, but by the end of it I forgave the majority of them and came to care about the group again. There's an emotional journey to be had here, and come the end of the instalment I found my bond with the characters was all the more stronger because of what Clem had gone through. During the downtime at the school, there's also a chance for Clem to have a romantic moment with either Violet or Lewis. Seeing as Violet had my back from the beginning, I chose to spend time with her over Lewis, and managed to get a cheeky kiss from her. I never set out with the intention of making my Clementine a lesbian, however I just felt more of a connection with Violet than to Lewis, and then the kiss just kind of happened, much like it does in real life. And I appreciate that Telltale managed to capture the impulsive nature of stealing a kiss from someone you fancy. I have to say, I'm not a romantic, lovey-dovey type guy, so I wasn't brought to tears or overly emotional during the sequence, but I can appreciate that it was heartwarming to finally have Clem take a romantic interest in someone. I did, however, find the Dot Stars game to be bloody boring. I get that the team were trying to do something different here, but let's just say I won't be in a rush to ever play through this moment again. Typically, just as things are going well, Lily and the group arrive with the intention of taking the kids with them. As expected, this doesn't go to plan as Clem's group managed to cleverly fight back, using tricks that Kevin from Home Alone would be proud of. Okay, maybe that was a bit too violent for Home Alone. All in all, I did enjoy the battle sequence, however I did find it a bit stupid of Lily not to retreat when it all kicked off. I mean, her entire goal was to kidnap kids to aid her war effort, and yet here she was leading her men and women into death, meaning she probably ended up going home with less people than what she started with, kind of defeating the entire point of the mission. I guess for Lily it became more of a personal battle between her and Clementine, but it's weird that we are told to believe that she's going on this recruitment mission, yet she wastes time getting into firefights with communities who aren't willing to accommodate. Surely it would have made more sense to direct this effort into the war, but I can overlook this as she was probably acting out of anger instead of thinking things through. And to be fair, the guy with one arm did say that he tried to warn her that Clem's group wouldn't give in. The major choice given to players at the end of the episode is whether to save Violet or Lewis, as whoever isn't chosen is captured by the Raiders. Personally, I didn't find this choice to affect me too much, simply due to the fact that this type of decision has popped up so many times in Telltale's games in the past, and it was kind of disappointing to see this choose which person to save scenario come up once again. Before I wrap up, there's two other things I quickly want to mention. Firstly, once again, I was struck many times by how beautiful this game looks. Seeing the cel-shaded buildings and trees in the background makes it very much feel like a comic book come to life. Secondly, can someone please explain to me how Clementine manages to fit such big objects in her back pocket?
Found something?
Yep, maybe useful.
Weird. To conclude, this episode doesn't really bring any new ideas to the table. I mean, I've already mentioned the parallels between how the school community are portrayed and how the TV show Alexandria are presented, and come the end of the episode we have yet another group attacking another group. But to be honest, none of that really matters. Yes, a lot of what happens has been done before, but Suffer the Children still manages to entertain throughout its runtime in spite of this. Lily is a much needed unhinged antagonist in a series that doesn't really have too many memorable villains, and I want Clem to find her and put a stop to her. In addition, I found most of the characters to be well written, and I like the fact that come the end of the episode, my opinions regarding many of them were completely different to how I felt about them a couple of hours earlier. Finally, the nod to the comics with the introduction of the Whisperers was a really nice touch that I appreciated. Overall, this entry is an excellent follow-up to a fantastic season opener that sets up a tantalising 2 final episodes. Sadly though, we are probably never going to actually see these final 2 episodes due to Telltale going to shit, which I'll quickly talk about now. When the news first broke stating that Telltale was sacking the majority of their staff, I didn't believe it. I remember reading an article posted on the Eurogamer in late August this year in which Telltale's The Walking Dead's producer, Brody Anderson, talked about his plans for the final season. It's depressing reading now going back to this article and reading through his quotes, as they are so full of optimism. He talks about how good the new engine is, as well as how proud he is that Telltale have a full release schedule for the upcoming season before the first episode was even released. And if the executive producer of arguably the company's most recognisable game didn't see Telltale's downfall coming, then there's no way the employees would even have the slightest idea either until they were told to clear their desks and leave. After realising that the reports about Telltale were in fact true, I became angry. Angry because it meant I wouldn't get to see an end to The Walking Dead. Angry that I'd paid for an entire season which I won't be getting, and I was also angry that I'm not going to see Game of Thrones Season 2 or The Wolf Among Us Season 2. However, during the last couple of days, after reading a lot of testimonies and tweets from employees, I realised that these guys and girls were hit a lot harder than we the general public were. Yes, it's annoying to have a game cancelled, but these people have lost their jobs out of the blue. Mary Kenny, the writer behind the latest Walking Dead episode, best summed this up when she said that the opening credits were so hard to watch due to the fact that all the people mentioned were now unemployed. It really hits home the idea that our selfish desires for a new game is nothing compared to what the people who've lost their livelihoods must be feeling. At first, I was all for the idea of The Walking Dead's last season being finished one way or another, but now I'm not too sure. Telltale issued a statement not too long ago saying they were going to do their best to get The Walking Dead finished, and in my mind there's 2 possible avenues for them to explore here. One, they somehow get the old team back on board to finish it, which I think is extremely unfair to expect of them seeing as they were fired, or 2, Telltale use what remaining staff they do have left, or perhaps another company to finish the game, in which case it begs the question of why to do it in the first place, because it will probably end up resembling nothing like The Walking Dead as we know it. Again, Mary Kenny said that if Telltale does finish the game, it will be done without most of the team from episode 1 and 2, and personally I don't really want to see that. I'm not saying that just because people have lost their jobs that we as consumers don't have the right to be angry. Of course we do. We've been duped into paying for a finished product which we aren't going to get. However, I have seen people online who I would only describe as idiots saying that the ex-employees must come back and finish the game. And to that I say, like, fuck they must. These people were fired without warning with no redundancy money. If it were me, I wouldn't want anything to do with Telltale ever again, even if they did pay me. By all means, everyone should get angry, but don't get angry at the people who have been affected the most. So yeah, the entire situation is a big sad mess. I'm still annoyed that The Walking Dead is done for, left on a mid-season cliffhanger, and I'm annoyed that I won't get to see any other Telltale projects. But I'm not annoyed at the people who work for Telltale who are now redundant. They are all just as pissed off, if not more, as we are. I don't really have a lot else to add. I don't know how or why Telltale got into such money troubles. I know they've taken on a hell of a lot of projects during the last couple of years, but you'd assume the companies like Marvel and DC who had given them the rights to work with their IPs would have paid them a decent amount to do so. For me, I would hazard a guess that something's gone wrong at the top of the management. Someone's been spending money that they shouldn't have done, which unfortunately has affected those who are paid the least. It's a sad state of affairs, and I really hope everyone affected can find employment as soon as possible, and it's a shame that a company whose games I've loved has fallen apart. So anyway, that's all for today. Please let me know your thoughts on this episode. Did you like it? Did you not like it? And also, what are your thoughts on the whole Telltale situation? I'm going to leave a comment below regarding my next video, so have a look at that. And until next time, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye. Ugh. Needed to burp then, that was really awkward. Bye.